I wanted initially to do this short talk, to put together this short film about a week ago, but here in the UK we had local elections last Thursday, the 5th of May, and I didn't want anyone to kind of accuse me of trying to sway anyone's vote. In my area, here in parts of the west of England, we didn't have local elections. Our local elections are due next year. But in any case, a lot of viewers or followers of this page in the UK had local elections last week. So I didn't really want to kind of sway anyone's vote in any particular direction by giving this talk before last Thursday. I want to talk a bit today about the kind of link, often the unhealthy link, between religious groups and politicians. We see on a regularish basis about how a religious group, it could be a local church, it could be a mosque, it could be a Hindu temple, it could be a Hare Krishna temple, will invite a politician along, maybe an MP or a councillor. On one hand, it's a good thing because, you know, the local councillor or the local MP is active in the community, wants to support religious groups, and that's generally a good thing. But often it can be used by a religious group and also for the politician or the political party for kind of, I'd say, unholy purposes, to try and raise their game or to try and get media attention or to try and attract new followers. So you often see this very unhealthy link between political parties and religious organizations. And I think religions, whichever religion, and today we're going to use ISKCON as an example, religions have a very careful line to tread amongst being involved with politicians, engaging with local elected officials and politicians, and at the same time not alienating its followers, its supporters, its well-wishers. I remember, it wasn't that long ago, about 2.5 years ago, in December 2019, Bhaktivedanta Manor, which is the biggest ISKCON, biggest Hare Krishna temple in the UK, decided to invite Boris Johnson and Priti Patel to Bhaktivedanta Manor. I think it was like 4 days before the UK general election. And obviously that raised some eyebrows. Now, in the one sense, if you're a Conservative supporter, which a number of those are in ISKCON, if you're a Conservative supporter, that's great. You know, I'm trying to get my fellow devotees to vote for the Conservative Party, on the values of the Conservative Party, great. But it also alienates those, for example, members of ISKCON who might not support the Conservative Party. I think an issue a lot of devotees had with Boris Johnson and Priti Patel visiting Bhaktivedanta Manor in December 2019 is it was so close to the general election. Now in the UK, there's something in law called purdah. Now I've completely forgotten what purdah stands for, but it's the legal period of time around 3 weeks up to a general election. So the media has to follow purdah, and that means everything has to be fair. So, for example, as well as talking about the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, media outlets also have to talk about the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party and the other smaller parties in councils, in local government, in national government. All around the country, there's all this idea, this practice, this regulation of purdah is also implemented. So, for example, in the council where I live, all council officials, so the civil servants, in the 3 weeks leading up to an election are not really allowed to engage with the candidates or the councillors, and they're not allowed to favour them over others. So purdah is something that the media follows, it's something that civil servants and council officers follow, and also I'd say generally it's something that kind of non-political charities and religious organisations should follow as well. They should follow this idea of purdah, fairness around election time. Now, for me personally, I don't have an issue with, the example that we're using, Bhaktivedanta Manor and Boris Johnson. I don't have an issue at all with Boris Johnson visiting Bhaktivedanta Manor. Now, he is the Prime Minister. He's running a majority government, and absolutely it's great to have the Prime Minister, whichever political colour or affiliation or flavour he or she is. It's great to have them visit your ISKCON temple, your Hare Krishna temple. However, you shouldn't do it in the run-up to an election, because firstly it's not fair. what the Manor should have done 4 or 5 days before that 2019 general election is they also, if they were going to invite Priti Patel and Boris Johnson for the Conservatives, they should also have invited representatives from the Labour Party, from the Liberal Democrats, from the Green Party, at least to show fairness. And if they, and if inviting politicians along at that point wasn't that essential, they shouldn't have invited politicians along at all. You're absolutely right. In ISKCON, as in lots of religious groups, there will be people who have, right of centre values, ideas, principles, right of centre, right wing, and that's absolutely fine. But also there'll be a lot of people, a lot of devotees, not just in ISKCON, but other Gaudiya Vaishnav groups, other religious groups completely, that will not have right of centre or right-wing views. There are those that are more kind of centrist, those that are left of centre or left, or liberal or progressive. So when I'm using Bhaktivedanta Manor as an example, because it's done this a number of times, when they invite a Conservative Prime Minister along, you've absolutely also got to invite, if you insist on having politicians visit at all, you've also got to invite representatives from other political parties. Otherwise, those people, which is a lot of people in the UK that don't have right of centre or right-wing values or views, will feel alienated. So ultimately, it's kind of best to kind of steer away or stay clean from kind of dealing with politicians unless you absolutely have to. Philosophies, or the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, transcends party politics. It transcends material government. Now, I am of the view that devotees should vote. Now, I know there's a lot of devotees actually that don't vote, and that's fine. I was chatting to one devotee a couple of years ago, and he said, well, I only really vote if it affects the devotees. An example would have been, I'm using Bhaktivedanta Manor as an example again now, back in, I think, 1994 or pre-1994, when the temple was due to close, certain political parties were more active in saving the temple from closure. So obviously, a lot of devotees voted for those political parties, which is fantastic, which is great. But actually, I am a devotee in the sense I'm a follower, I'm trying to follow Gaudiya Vaishnavism, I'm trying to follow Krishna consciousness, I'm trying to follow Bhakti Yoga, but I'm also a human being. I also have general views, like, I want there to be, there's a road over here, I want there to be good quality roads so I can drive my car over it. I want to have good local parks, like here. I like trees, play park for the children. I want to have great local libraries. I want to have good local schools. So I'm all these things. I'm a devotee, and all these things are important to me as a devotee, because I want to live in a world where we are materially healthy as well as spiritually healthy as well. So that's my little thing today. I've entitled it, ISKCON and the Conservative Party, a match made in heaven or hell. There are some links, most of you would have noticed, I don't have to rant about it today, between ISKCON in the UK and the British Conservative Party. And there's also some unsavoury links in India between ISKCON and the BJP, which is the ruling kind of right-wing party there as well. Ultimately, Krishna consciousness does and should transcend party politics. And if we're running a Hare Krishna temple, if we're running any religious group, what we should do, we should either not engage with politicians at all or engage with them all. I'll leave you one little story. Years ago, I was told about this minister, this Methodist minister in the Christian tradition, and the Conservative Party knocked on his door, and they chatted, and they said to him, "Can you put up our poster, please?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll put up your poster." So he put up a poster for the Conservative Party. And then the next day, the Labour Party knocked on the door. They chatted, and they said, "Oh, can you put up our poster?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll put up your poster." And the next day, the Liberal Democrats knocked on the door, and they asked him if he put up a poster, and he said, "Yeah." So he was actually very clever about all three main parties had their poster in his window, which I thought was quite funny. So ISKCON and the UK Conservative Party. A match made in heaven or hell? I'll let you decide.